Hey everyone, Mitch coming in for the Commander's Core Studio. Welcome to the show. Okay. Oh yeah, I definitely can't do a full episode in this. Could you even hear that? Hey everyone. Oh, that's probably better. Anyways, yeah. Let's take that off and just start over the hat. Hey everyone, Mitch coming in for the Commander's Core Studio. Welcome to the show. As you can probably already tell, today's going to be a bit of a different episode, different kind of episode. Starting off, obviously, with the helmet, for Greasefang, but also different because, well, I really haven't tackled a deck tech in this way, or I haven't tackled kind of an episode in this way. I've been doing more of these kind of uncut episodes where I've just been turning on the camera essentially, and yeah, going from there, with whatever kind of news or topic or whatnot. But yeah, I'm really kind of trying to do different things based on your feedback. So yeah, let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on this. I love hearing from you. Love making improvements on the show. And yeah, I kind of want to tackle, the concept of a deck tech in a different way. Kind of, again, just, more in a uncut way. Just basically turning the camera on and just talking kind of my thoughts, basically on how I went about building the deck. And utilizing Moxfield, which is a great deck building website, which allows you to essentially kind of tag cards, with basically what their essential function is in the deck. And you can tag them with multiple functions. So it just kind of makes it easy to kind of lay out all those different, again, like what I've been calling on previous episodes, for a long time now, just tactics, essentially. Now I can kind of bring about, multiple kind of ways a card can help out with a deck. And again, hopefully I'm not too too long and drawn out on an episode like this where I'm talking a bit too much with this being an uncut episode. I'm already kind of drowning on right now. But yeah, basically, hopefully I can kind of, illustrate, my thoughts behind the deck as well as kind of how the cards are going to be functioning in the deck for you. Yeah, really quick before we jump any further into this episode, a huge thank you to my patrons. I really couldn't do this without you. And this episode is actually a Patreon exclusive deck. Basically, once a month, patrons vote on what commander they'd like to see in an upcoming episode. And that commander that gets the most votes in that contest wins. So then that commander is built around a deck by me, and this is going to be the episode on it. So here we go. So Greasefang Okiba Boss was the commander that won for this month. Greasefang says, beginning of combat on your turn, return target vehicle card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste. Return to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step, or your next end step, sorry. A 4/3 rat pilot that costs 1 white-black, so Orzhov. An Orzhov commander that is definitely vehicle-centric. Basically, reanimate a vehicle every single one of your combats, essentially. And yeah, that vehicle does get haste, but it is not crewed. It just not is inherently crewed, though Greasefang obviously can help crew it. With 4 power, that's a good amount of power to crew something. And then, of course, on top of that, that vehicle does get bounced to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. But that we actually have some ways to get around. I mean, it can be a good thing, obviously, if that vehicle maybe has an ETB that we want to utilize and we've got, mana that we can cast it back again to get it back out more permanently. Or again, obviously, and I'll talk about plenty of ways here in a bit that can help you essentially kind of get that vehicle out and keep it for free from there. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways that we can get value out of this vehicle-centric commander. When it comes to the different tactics, I think I'm going to start off actually at ramp, and excuse me for actually, I probably should have, ordered these in a different way, but here we are, the first time I'm trying an episode like this. So when it comes to ramp, we've actually got, it looks like 13 cards that deal with ramping in one way or another, and there's actually some vehicles that can help with that as well. Though, of course, we do have to start off. First up, there's Wayfarer's Bauble, obviously. So Wayfarer's Bauble, a great ramp card, pay 2 tap, sacrifice, get a basic land, in a play tapped. Great card for a lot of decks out there, especially decks that don't have access to green. Of course, there's plenty of other mana rocks. Arcane Signet taps 3 of our colors. Felwar Stone does so most of the time. And then we've got Orzhov Signet, which can help too. Talisman of Hierarchy as well. Basically really good mana rocks when it comes to helping fixing our mana. But outside of mana rocks, we also have some vehicles, again, like I mentioned, that can help too. Cultivator's Caravan is a great one, just a very simple, 3 mana rock that tempts for 1 mana of any one color. So, Manolith, I think, is essentially what, that kind of example of a 3 mana rock. And though it's not the most efficient again, this one, again, is a 5/5, potentially with a crew 3. So yeah, this is one that we can obviously get back with our commander too, which can be great, and obviously can be a decent threat. When it comes to other ones that might help ramp us as well, Raider's Carve is a great one as well. Whenever it attacks, look at the top card of your library. If it's a land card, you put on the battlefield tapped. So yeah, I believe Explorer Scope is kind of like the equipment that basically does that. But now we have, again, a vehicle that we can, swing with. If it gets dealt with, that's okay. Again, our commander can get it back. But obviously, it can help ramp us throughout the game, help get lands off the top of our library, and help us dig into better draws. Aerial Surveyor is another great one. 3/4 flyer with crew 2. Whenever it attacks, the defending player controls more lands than you. Search your library for a basic plains card on the battlefield, tapped, then shuffle. Chances are there's going to be a green player at the table, and they're probably going to have more lands in play than us, because again, we only have access to like what Wayfarer's Bauble essentially, and maybe like Mirror Landscape when it comes to actually getting more and more lands into play. So yeah, chances are pretty likely that another player is going to have more lands than us, and so therefore we can actually ramp with this pretty consistently. Colossal Plow is actually a pretty funny vehicle that can really help us out as well. I mean, it's just kind of funny thing about like a plow attacking someone. But regardless, a 6/3 vehicle with crew 6, so quite the hefty crew cost. But again, with vehicles, it's kind of weird where you can like actually crew one vehicle to crew another to crew another. So like you can just crew up and up, higher and higher and higher to crew something that has a higher crew cost like this. So we can attack and get that trigger. Again, whenever it attacks, add white, 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 and you gain 3 life until end of turn. You don't lose mana steps and phases end. So that can be very impactful for us. Obviously in a lot of ways other than just being a 6/3 that can attack as well. When it comes to some other mana rocks that I probably should have mentioned already, but also I believe I'm going to mention them in another category. And again, this is my first time doing an episode like this, so please, please, please go easy on me. Ebony Fly and Guardian Knight are both great ones. These each can turn into creatures, and that can really help us crew our vehicles as well. Another great way to go about that. Scourge Familiar is a great, I mean, it's kind of, it does a lot of things for this deck actually, and I'm going to bring up in a couple different categories, but obviously it can be a source of ramp for us. Not permanent ramp, but kind of temporary ramp, but one that can be very impactful, especially in a single turn. A 3/2 flyer that has discard a card, add black. So essentially, we can just pitch cards to get, a lot of free mana in a turn to really kind of help us reach and get to that point that we need to get to cast something big. And also, getting those vehicles into our graveyard with a, cheap way like this can be a great way to set ourselves up to actually have Greasefang, be able to get those back out essentially for free. And again, like I mentioned before, we've got some ways to essentially kind of cheat those into play and keep them in play. So yeah, and then Mirror Landscape is another great, source of ramp as well. Just a land, which is a great card. Pay 2 tap, sacrifice to get 2 basic lands that your land type into play tapped. So yeah, we've got a lot of avenues to ramp with a deck like this. Let's go back down though and move on to some card advantage. And also in here, you're going to notice again that we've got vehicles that can help fill in some of these slots as well. It's really good when you have, your kind of core strategy, and that kind of core strategy, again, with this deck being vehicles, can also kind of branch out and help other areas too. So again, with vehicles, I mean, just looking at it right now, I mean, we've got, looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 vehicles essentially within this kind of card advantage bucket essentially. So yeah, that can really help us out. And when I do say card advantage, it's kind of, I do kind of say actually more so card advantage and selection is kind of what I'm actually saying with this. So I should probably specify that, but anyways, it's just how I label them and when I'm going about building decks. So yeah, even like Bomat Bazaar Barge, a 5/5 vehicle that's got crew 3, enters the battlefield, draws a card. Keep in mind when it comes to ETBs with this commander, they can be very, very impactful because again, our commander can sneak out these, vehicles from our graveyard into play, cheat them out. We get their ETB, we get value out of them. Even if they're bounced back to our hand, yeah, we get even more value out of them too, by recasting them, get that value again. So with this one, we can draw a lot of cards throughout the game with this. Or, also, and I'll mention again here in a bit, I keep, referring to it, and I should probably just go to that next. But yeah, ways to essentially cheat around and keep them in play. And those ways can also essentially use and abuse ETBs as well. Another vehicle, Imperial Recovery Unit, a 3/4. Whenever attacks return a creature or vehicle card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to your hand. So another way to get, even more value out of this. Basically a regrowth kind of effect for a small creature or vehicle, on top of this just being a vehicle itself that can help us out. Mighty Servant of Luke O. And again, on these episodes, my apologies if I mispronounce words. I'm not going to be stopping to correct, or I'm going to try not to stop myself too much to correct myself. Anyways, 6/6 vehicle, trample, or discard a card. When it becomes crewed for the first time each turn, if it was crewed by exactly 2 creatures, it gains. When this creature goes common damage to a player, draw 2 cards until end of turn. Yeah, we can very easily crew this with 2 creatures and get that as well. Smuggler's Buggy. This one's a hideaway card. Hideaway force, basically get 1 card off the top 4, exile it, essentially kind of put it under this, and then when you meet the requirement, you get to cast it for free. Whenever it deals counter to a player, you may cast the exile card without paying its mana cost. If you do, return Smuggler's Buggy to its owner's hand. So you can actually kind of just keep hideawaying with this again and again and again and again. if you're getting this out of your graveyard with your commander, you get a lot of repeatable value with it. Smuggler's Copter, Looter Scooter, as it is, a crew 1, 3/3 flyer. Whenever it attacks or blocks, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. So again, that can actually help, again, getting more vehicles into our graveyard, setting ourselves up with that. And actually, I think I forgot to actually tag this one with that. My apologies. We'll get to that here in a bit, though. Weatherlight, another great way to get vehicles off the top of our library. Whenever it deals combination to a player, look at the top 5 cards of your library and reveal a historic card from among them, which obviously is an artifact, saga, or legendary creature, or legendary permanent, I should say. And yeah, being able to just get that right into our hand, the rest of the bottom of our library in random order, that can be a lot of value throughout the game for us. When it comes to another thing that actually works really well with vehicles, let's talk about Lochiel, Clockwork Scholar. Prevent all combat damage to be dealt to attacking artifact creatures you control. It's a great way to protect our team. And then on top of that, whenever one or more artifact creatures enter the battlefield under your control, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. Again, we do have ways to kind of use and abuse ETB, so we'll talk about those here in a bit. But yeah, even just in combination with our commander, getting one vehicle out in under our control essentially every single turn, or every single one of our combats, I should say. Yeah, that meets that requirement. We're going to be drawing a card. We can draw a lot of cards with this throughout the game, and again, protect our team while we're doing so. Now, when it comes to actually, let me cover SRAM real quick. SRAM, whenever you cast an aura, equipment, or vehicle spell, draw a card. Yeah, we have a lot of vehicles in this deck. We're gonna be drawing a good amount of cards with SRAM, and again, SRAM just kind of being another body on the ground can help crew some of our vehicles too. Now, there are some again spells when it comes to trying to utilize our commander's trigger in as best we can, because again, there is that downside in a way to our commander's trigger where, hey, you get the vehicle back in play, but it's going to go back to your hand at the end of the turn. Now, again, in some ways that's an upside, in some ways it's a downside, and we can have some ways to really play with that, and sacrificing that to actually get it back into our graveyard or to keep it in play longer. We'll talk about those here in a bit, and I keep saying that, can actually be very impactful. So a card like Costly Plunder, additional cost to cast, sacrifice an artifact or creature, draw 2 cards. So basically, hey, yeah, get that vehicle back into play with your commander, sacrifice it, draw some cards, get it back in your graveyard, so your commander can then utilize it again. Maybe it's got a great ETB, or maybe we just really want to keep using and abusing it and utilizing it further, again, with those effects that we're going to talk about here in a bit. Deadly Dispute is cost to cast it, sacrifice an artifact or creature, draw 2 cards, create treasure. Again, a great effect right there. Disciple of Bolas can be a fantastic one, especially with some of our bigger vehicles. When it enters the battlefield, sacrifice another creature, you gain X life and draw X cards, X that creature's power. So again, all we have to do is just crew that vehicle essentially. Again, some of our vehicles have 8 power essentially, a ton of power. Sacrifice it, draw a ton of cards, gain a ton of life, and again, ways to get even more value out of them. Reckoner's Bargain, somewhat similar. Sacrifice an artifact or creature, you gain life, you'll sacrifice permanents minute value, draw 2 cards. So again, another way to draw some cards, sacrifice it for value, gain some life. Empiric Rights, a great repeatable way. Pay 1 and a black, sacrifice a creature, gain 1 life, draw cards. This one sticks in play. We can really heavily utilize this throughout the game. Village Rights probably should be the first one that I brought up in this category because, well, it is the most efficient out of all of them, being just 1 mana. Sacrifice a creature, draw 2 cards. So again, unlike some of the others that actually can sacrifice an artifact, we do obviously have to have that creature crewed or vehicle crewed in order to actually get this, but that's okay. Key to the City is a great card in this deck as well. This again is one that's more like card selection kind of, rather than just straight up card advantage. Tap, discard a card. Up to 1 target creature can't be blocked this turn. So this can make one of our vehicles unblockable, which is great. Whenever it becomes untapped, we can pay 2 if we do draw a card. So this is like card replacement, essentially. It's kind of like a delayed, I guess not looting. What's the other one? Now it's just, I will get back to it. Of course, it's going to escape me right when I'm here, and everyone in the comments is like, it's this. Not looting, but, oh gosh, I lost it. Okay, anyways. But Buried Ruin is the other card I want to bring up. Just another great land for this deck. You can tap for colorless, pay 2 tap, sacrifice, return to our artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. So yeah, basically a way to get back an artifact from a graveyard that could be quite important to us to get it back. Guy Reach Sanitarium, another, again, card selection card that can be fantastic. Taps for colorless, pay 2 tap. Each player draws a card and this card's card, so each player loots essentially. And yeah, with this being able to, again, just ditch a vehicle, maybe we've got a high cost vehicle in our hand that we want to get into our graveyard. Great, we can do so. We can set it up for our commander. Moving on, now let's talk about, actually, and I'll skip over to the actual keep and play cards that I've been mentioning a couple times. But basically, again, when our commander gets that vehicle back out into play, sometimes we want to be able to just keep that vehicle essentially in play, kind of getting around that bounce effect at the end of the turn. Some great ways to do that are cards like Cloud Shift. exile target creature you control, return that card to the battlefield under your control. So yeah, just a very simple blink spell that can be used to protect our things as well. But yeah, being able just to pay 1 mana essentially to say, okay, you know, that vehicle that we just cheated out to play with our commander from our graveyard, now it's going to stay in play. And again, we can do that anytime kind of, you know, before the end of our turn essentially to ensure that we're not, you know, losing that card. Not losing it, but it going back to our hand instead. Ephemerit's a great one. It's got basically the exact same thing, but it's got rebound, so you get to do it again. Fake your own death. This is kind of on the other end of things. This is like more of a feign death type effect. And actually, maybe I'll just do feign death because I call all these feign death cards feign death essentially. Till end of turn, target creature gains. When this creature dies from the battlefield, tapped under its owner's control, they counter on it. Basically, a lot of similar effects like this one. Fake your own death is kind of the same, but you know, basically pumps the creature ahead of time. It gives the treasure. Supernatural stamina, again, just pumps the creature. Undying evil gives the creature undying. Undying malice, again, basically the exact same thing. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's the exact same thing as feign death. All these basically are, hey, if you sacrifice that, you know, vehicle, creature, whatever it is, you know, with one of those effects that we already talked about, you know, like that village rights or whatnot. Cool. All right, you cheated out into play with your commander. You sacrifice it for value, but before you do that, you know, you make sure you cast one of these feign death effects on it so that it's going to just come right back into play for you. And again, if it's one of those creatures that has, you know, an ETB, you can really use and abuse something like this. Again, when it comes to blink effects, though, you have Cloud Shift, Ephemerate, Flicker of Fates, another good one. Exile target creature enchantment, return to the battlefield under owner's control. Otherworldly Journey, exile target creature at the beginning of the next end step, return that card to the battlefield under owner's control, they counter on it. So keep in mind, some of these can actually affect your opponent's creatures as well. So if someone's going to be swinging at you with a massive creature, and probably one that doesn't have a massive ETB that, you know, might hurt you, but yeah. Someone swinging at you with a massive creature, it's kind of like a, no, you didn't just do that kind of effect too. Or, you know, actually for those that bring it back to the end step, if you need to get through on an opponent, yeah, you can blink their creature away and it'll come back later, but they're not going to have that blocker. Far Traveler is a great card for this commander as well. A background, although obviously your commander doesn't have a background or, you know, choose background, but still. Commander creatures you own have at the beginning of your end step, exile up to 1 target tap creature you control. They return to the battlefield under its owner's control. So yeah, essentially, you can stack your triggers in a way where instead of that, you know, vehicle bouncing back to your hand, you can ensure that you get to blink it. And of course, just outside of that, yeah, it's just gonna be a good way to use and abuse ETBs as well. Golden Argosy is a vehicle that can actually help us out with this kind of in a way. When it attacks, exile each creature they recruited this turn, return the battlefield, tap under control to begin the next end step, and it's got crew 1. So with this one, again, keep in mind that, yeah, sure, you might not be attacking with that vehicle that you're cheating back out to play with your commander, but yeah, I mean, you still need to crew it, but then you can, once you have that vehicle crewed, crew other vehicles with it, and Golden Argosy, of course, can be crewed by essentially anything. It's got, you know, crew 1. So yeah, crew it with that vehicle, keep that vehicle around, essentially, again, cheat, you know, that kind of cost of actually having to replay it, and just keep it in play. Again, use and abuse ETBs a lot with that as well. Let's go back up real quick. Crew help, speaking of crewing. Armed and Armored is a great card in this deck, and not because it's Dwarf Tribal. Vehicles you control become artifact creatures till end of turn. Choose a dwarf you control attached to equipment. Don't worry about that. But yeah, vehicles you control become artifact creatures till end of turn. It's just basically, it's a 2-mana way to essentially crew up every single one of your vehicles. This can be a great surprise kind of attack, you know, just out of nowhere. Okay, I've got a lot of vehicles in play, but maybe I don't have a bunch of things that can crew. Your opponents think they're safe, and then all of a sudden you crew up your entire team and swing out. It can be very problematic for them. A creature that can essentially crew basically any of your vehicles is Bronze Guardian. It's got double strike and ward 2. Its other artifacts you control have ward 2, and its power is equal to the number of artifacts you control. So yeah, the more and more vehicles you get in play, the more powerful this becomes, the more it can actually hit too if you want it to be, you know, that threat on the battlefield against that double strike. And again, most importantly, kind of all these things, being able to give all your artifacts, you know, ward 2, that's a great way to protect them and a great way to protect your vehicles. Cave of the Frost Dragon, lands like this can be incredible. If you control 2 more other lands, it enters the battlefield tapped. It can tap for colorless. By paying 4 and a white, it becomes a 3/4 white dragon creature with flying till turn slowly land. So yeah, of course you can swing with it if you need to, or you can utilize this in other lands to actually crew your vehicles for you. So yeah, they can just start kind of that crew chain in a way. Let's just call it that. If you have a smaller vehicle that you want to crew up to crew a bigger vehicle to be more threatening, you can do that. Crawling Barrens, another land that can essentially get bigger throughout the game. This one just gets 2 counters on it every single time you activate it, and yeah, it can become a creature. Say you can crew Dread Statuary, another land that does some crewing as well. Pay 4, it comes a 4/2. Forbidding Watchtower can be a 1/5. Mistress Foundry can be a 2/2. Mobilized District can become a 3/3. Shambling Vent can become a 2/3 with lifelink.
Spawning pool, just a 1/1, but again, with that kind of crew chain I talked about, yeah, you can essentially, crew a small, maybe crew like, the looter scooter has crew 1, right? So that's a 3/3. You can crew then something that has, 3 crew cost, which is going to be a lot bigger. Mech Hanger, though, can essentially crew anything. Taps for colorless, you can tap down 1 mana color to spend it only cast on a pilot or vehicle, and by paying 3, you can tap and target vehicle as an artifact creature until end of turn. Basically, crew it up for mana, essentially. Speaking of that, Peace Walker Colossus is a actual vehicle itself that can help you crew other vehicles. Pay 1 and a white, another target vehicle control becomes an artifact creature until end of turn. So yeah, you can essentially just pay 2 mana to start crewing your vehicles. This can be fantastic. When it comes to other creatures, we already talked about Scourge Familiar, Shram as well, obviously can help crew too. As well, we talked about Guardian Idol, Ebony Fly as some mana rocks that can help us out as well. We did not talk about Martial Coup yet. Create X 1/1 white soldier creature tokens. If X is 5 or more, destroy other creatures. So this can be a board wipe as well as a way to, fill the board with tokens, either or essentially. But yeah, being able to fill the board with tokens obviously can be great ways to crew. And if you need to get rid of creatures, yeah, do so. Get rid of, all the creatures on the board. And obviously, don't crew your vehicles before you do that. Keep your vehicles in play by having them be uncrewed and essentially, really take advantage of that. Another creature that can really help us out, though, and actually in multiple ways, is Metalwork Colossus, a 10/10 that costs 11, but it's going to cost X less to cast for X the total mana value of non-creature artifacts you control. So basically, yeah, in many instances, we're going to be able to cast this for just 0 because our, vehicles, if they're not crewed, meet that requirement. So do our, mana rocks, etc., etc. So yeah, plenty of ways to actually cast this for just 0 by sacrificing 2 artifacts. We can turn it back from our graveyard to our hand. Again, there are going to be plenty of times where we actually want to sacrifice artifacts. We want to sacrifice those vehicles, again, with those feigned death type effects. So yeah, this can come in really handy. Phyrexian Rebirth, another board wipe like Martial Coup. Destroy all creatures, then create an XX Phyrexian artifact creature token where X the number of creatures destroyed this way. Basically, yeah, again, this counts our opponent's creatures as well, so it's going to create us a massive threat that, of course, can essentially, crew any of our vehicles as well. Other vehicles that can help out, though, Night Scythe, when it enters the battlefield, we get a 2/2, and Necron Monolith, flying indestructible, 7/7, so that's pretty huge. Whenever it attacks, we mill 3 cards, so that's yet another way to, again, set our graveyard up, which is going to be great. And for each creature card mill this way, create 2/2 black Necron Warrior artifact creature tokens. So this can actually help, again, in multiple ways. Mills us to set ourselves up. Also, makes us, tokens essentially to help us actually, crew even more vehicles as well. So yeah, plenty of great ways to actually crew our vehicles in this deck, outside of just our commander. Next up, though, another creature in this deck, and actually the golden pig of this deck, is Auric Loremage, an incredible card that, well, yes, we can crew vehicles with it, but more likely we're going to be tapping it for other things as well. A 3/3 human warlock for a 2 black. Tap, search your life for a card, put in your graveyard, then shuffle. If it's an instant or sorcery card, put a counter on Auric Loremage. So yeah, we might not get a lot of counters on this because we're probably going to be searching a lot for vehicles. Again, this is basically, hey, set ourselves up for the exact vehicle that we want for the situation that we're in so that we can utilize them with Greasefang, cheat them out into play. And again, we've got plenty of ways to keep them in play once we're there. So yeah, Auric Loremage is a fantastic card for this deck, an incredible way to set our graveyard up, and yeah, definitely in my opinion, the golden pig. Let's see what we got next. We've got already done keep and play. Let's take the lands for last. Protection. So ways to protect our army. We already talked about Bronze Guardian, Ward 2 for all of our artifacts. Cauldron Haze is a really cool card, and one that I don't think I actually had in that kind of keep and play category. Maybe I skipped over it, but it should be up there too. Choose any of our target creatures. Each of those creatures gains persist until end of turn. Basically the opposite of Undying. Creature dies, comes back into play, then -1/-1 counter on it if it didn't have a -1/-1 counter on it. So yeah, this is a great way to essentially save our entire team, and again, utilize those effects, those sacrifice effects very, very effectively to actually keep a creature in play more permanently rather than just our commanders bouncing it back to our hand. And then again, all of these other protection effects that we already talked about, with ways to keep our creatures in play, and then low shield as well. We already talked about ramp removal. Let's wait till let's talk about vehicles. I probably should have talked about these, but we've talked about a lot of them again, because again, like I mentioned earlier, it's really good when you have that core strategy, but pieces of that core strategy that kind of fit into other parts of our plan as well. Ardar Express is one that I don't believe I mentioned just yet. An 8/6 with Menace in Crew 4. Yeah, this can be a really heavy hitter. And again, Crew 4 might be a decent amount. Our commander can still reach that, obviously. And then also, if we do need to, again, have those scenarios where we're using, One of those lands that just turns into a 1-power creature to crew up against something that's small, to crew something bigger, we can. I've talked about Bomart, have not talked about Fleetwheel Cruiser, a 5/3 trample and haste, enters the battle, becomes an artifact creature till end of turn. So this one essentially auto crews when it comes into play. So this can be a very effective card in a lot of situations for us. High speed hover bike is a 2/2 with flash and flying, enters the battlefield. We tap it to 1 target creature. This can be a great way to either protect ourselves if we know an opponent's going to be coming at us with a creature, or a way to get one of our creatures through as well. A Knight Paladin, new from Warhammer 40k, 6/6 with trample. When it enters the battlefield, it does 4 damage to each opponent. It's only got crew 1, so this can deal a lot of damage, not just in combat, but again, this can be a great card for us to use and abuse with our commander. Essentially, getting it back out into play. Maybe having a way to sacrifice it, get it back to our graveyard, get it back into play. maybe blink it, keep it in play. There are plenty of ways to get that trigger again and again and again, and that can really add up throughout the game. Again, that 4 damage is a lot. Mech Titan Core, of course, is an incredible card. A lot of fun. Pay 5, exile it, and for the artifact, creatures, and or vehicles you control. Create Mech Titan, a legendary 10/10 construct artifact creature token with flying, vigilance, trample, lifelink, and haste that's all colors. When the token leaves the battlefield, return all cards, exile with it, except Mech Titan Core to the battlefield, tapped under control. Basically, assemble Voltron is kind of what you're doing. So yeah, just basically make the biggest threat on the board by doing that. And of course, meeting that requirement of having this and 4 other vehicles is very easy for this deck to meet. A Mysterious Limousine, I don't think I brought that one up yet. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, exile to 1 target creature until a Mysterious Limousine leaves the battlefield. Big creatures put in exile this way, return each other card, exile with it to the battlefield under its owner's control. It's going to be a way that we can blink our own creatures if we need to with this. Obviously, we can also blink our opponent's creatures and kind of temporarily get rid of them as well. Speaking of getting rid of creatures, Mukotai, a Soul Ripper. When it attacks, you may sacrifice another artifact or creature. If you do, put a counter on it and it gains medicine until end of turn. So again, this can be another repeatable way to sacrifice those vehicles that we want sacrificed. Again, whether that's for a Feigned Death type of effect, or just to be able to get back into our graveyard for our commander to get it back out. Surge Hacker Mech. I have not talked about this one yet. I think I've talked about all the other vehicles though. 5/5 with Menace, crew 4, enters the battlefield, deals damage equal to twice the number of vehicles you control, target creature, planeswalker, and opponent controls. Yeah, this can just pretty much get any planeswalker or creature off the board essentially. And again, with it being on an ETB, that's a very, very easy to abuse effect for a deck like this. When it comes to removal, let's talk about that now, because I think that's the next category. Here we go. Yeah, removal. We've already talked about a couple of these, but yeah, Austere Command, a great flexible card, especially for a deck like this. Choose to destroy all artifacts, destroy all enchantments, destroy all creatures with mana value 3 or less, destroy all creatures with mana value 4 or greater. This can be a one-sided board wipe in many ways. I mean, if we want to keep, say, our creature, or, our commander, most of our creatures as well have a low converted mana cost, and our vehicles in play, and let's just say they're not crewed, we can destroy all creatures with mana value 4 or greater, and destroy all enchantments or whatnot. So yeah, we've got ways to kind of essentially make this very one-sided for us. Cleansing Nova, very flexible as well. Destroy all creatures, destroy all of artifacts and enchantments. Again, if we have our vehicles not crewed, we can essentially keep them, in play by destroying all creatures with this. So we still have an army, our opponents do not. Bone Shards is a great kind of a one-off effect that can just be incredible in a lot of situations. Basically, sacrifice a creature, discard a card, destroy target creature, planeswalker. So again, discarding a vehicle from our hand can actually be a very good thing again to set ourselves up. Or sacrificing a creature. Again, if we cheat a vehicle out with our commander, we can sacrifice it to get additional value from it from our graveyard, or with a Feigned Death type of effect. Crush Contraband, just solid removal, exile 2 artifacts and enchantments. Despark, yes, again, solid removal, exile target permanent, converted mana cost 4 or greater. Oblation, a great, let's say, card advantage slash, potential card advantage, slash removal spell. The owner of target non-land permanent shovels into the library, then draws 2 cards. So if we need to draw some cards, we can, get rid of one of our non-land permanents that we don't need, or, if someone's going to remove something anyways, we can just say, you know what, I'll just take 2 cards instead. Or, of course, we can get rid of something if we really need to that opponent has in exchange for some cards. And then Rite of Oblivion, additional cost to cast a spell, sacrifice a non-land permanent, exile target non-land permanent, and it's got flashback. So again, kind of like Bone Shards, a way to actually sacrifice one of our things to get rid of an opponent's thing. And again, there are going to be plenty of times where we actually want to sacrifice something, again, for those Feigned Death type of effects. Again, speaking of sacrifice, we've got all these cards, and I think I've talked about pretty much every single one of them, except Phyrexia's Core, a great land for this deck. It taps for a colorless, or we can pay 1 to tap and sacrifice an artifact, and we gain 1 life. So again, in a situation where we actually need to sacrifice a vehicle, we can. Set Graveyard, I think I've talked about all these as well. That's vehicles. I think we need to go back up to the lands. I think that's it for this deck. I've talked about a good amount of them, again, like Cave of the Frost Dragon, those types of cards that can actually, help you crew vehicles as well. Talked about cards like Buried Ruin that can help, in a way with, like, card advantage, in a way, again, getting something back, essentially. Again, Phyrexia's Core for actually sacrificing things. The rest are just going to be, mana fixing, essentially. Ash Baron's great, basic land cycled away. Caves of Koilos can, tap for their colors for 1 damage. Command Tower taps for their colors. Exotic Orchard does so most of the time. Let's see, what else have we not covered? We did Mirrored Landscape for ramp. Plains, 7 swamps. Terran Expanse, Evolving Wilds are going to be great, again, just to go get a land. Tainted Field can tap for either of our colors, only control a swamp. I think that covers essentially every single land. We've talked about all the non-lands. We've talked about every single land. And now let's talk about the price of this deck. So I probably should mention this at the beginning of this episode. And again, because this is, a brand new type of episode that I have not done before, I definitely made a mistake and did not do that. But yeah, every single card in this deck, and I believe including the commander as well, is less than $1. So it's a very budget-friendly deck. The estimated cost is just $31.58. And actually, that estimated cost does include basic lands at 10 cents a piece. So if you already have those basic lands, there's some extra savings there for you. And also, there's some potential extra savings for you if you buy this deck on TCG Player, utilizing heavy played and damage cards, because of course, those cards need a home too. Just keep in mind, though, that estimated cost does not include the cost of shipping, which might vary depending upon where you live. So yeah, I hope that you enjoyed this new kind of way that I'm approaching. Again, I'm just going to call it at this point, the ultimate guide to Greasefang, because I try to go a little more in depth, kind of in some ways, but also, a little higher level in some ways too. Yeah, I would really like to hear from you, what your thoughts are on, kind of this way of breaking down a deck, trying to see kind of more of my thoughts behind, this card fitting in multiple categories and such. So yeah, again, let me know in the comments below. Again, a huge thank you to my patrons for this episode. And of course, as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.